One of the great things about Spa is all of the corner names. They have so many names for corners.
Great names.
That they even have one called the No-Name Corner.
I know. The No-Name Corner is a great. The No-Name Corner is awesome. A great corner. And there's I think some people I believe. If I'm wrong, the Slipstream team will call me on this, but I believe some people try to call it the speaker's corner.
Okay.
Because when you're in the speaker's box, that's the only point you can see that corner. I think it's the only point they can see it. But I reject that. Not nearly as good of a name as the No-Name Corner.
That's awesome.
It's a great name. Don't try to change it.
Don't try to change it, and keep going back to Spa, even if it wasn't the greatest race we've ever seen out there. That's a sexy-looking racetrack.
Oh,
the best-looking racetrack in the world. But Graydon, you are a straight-up track sicko, and that's why you're going to hit us with your top 10 favorite corners in Formula One.
Okay, here we go, folks. First of all, I'm cheating a little bit. There's 11 because first and foremost, I have an honorable mention.
What about this corner?
That's
what we call it in the No Dunks universe, where when you're doing a top 10. You cannot stop at 10. You've got to go to 11 to 15.
Yeah.
And the honorable mentions are usually called, what about this guy? Who's the number 17th All-Star pick? What about this guy?
Yep.
What about this corner?
What about this corner?
Yeah.
Peraltada in Mexico City. This is historically the corner that used to be there. It was a long right-hander that was taken at a borderline flat-out pace. Was one of the most intense corners on the F1 calendar. I believe it was part of the racetrack up through 2014, 1 year before they brought F1 back to Mexico City. Now this section is the section that you see them go through when they go through the big stadium.
Okay.
And they kind of snake through there. So they have that small snake through area. But they've replaced, that is what replaced this section of the course, which is super fun for the fans and is great on TV. And I think is a cool addition to it. My only problem is that it cost them what was probably the best moment on the track in terms of pure racing, which was Peraltada.
Why is this intense?
It just is the it's the speed. The speed of it here. You're coming in. You actually used to, I think, I think you came in at a pretty high speed, but then you didn't really need to let up any sort of corner where you're just borderline on the edge, but you're still in a very, very high gear and you're coming all the way around. The G-forces you're going to experience are super intense. The ability to hold on to the car at the very, very in these weird low downforce setups that you have in Mexico City because of the elevation, things like that. It's weird. It's a weird track for a lot of weird elevation reasons, and this just made a super intense, super challenging moment on it for the drivers historically.
All right, well, let's move on to the official part of the
number 10. Now we're down to the true top 10 here. The first one, Turn One at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. This is recently renamed Big Red after Red McCombs, who was an investor in the course and was a former owner of the San Antonio Spurs, briefly owned the Denver Nuggets, and also owned the Minnesota Vikings at one point as well. So kind of a big shot in terms of American sports, but helped bring the track to life. And then this is a huge elevation game, 133-foot climb up to the top there. This is actually the first thing I ever saw at my first ever race. I walked out, into the main grandstand there during I believe what was an F3 supporting race, and looked over and they had just lined up and saw them kind of take off up the hill and thought, my gosh, this is just so cool. And I think this moment when we get a TV shot, something along these lines, when they always show it from the front so you can see the front too, but then when they kind of invert the camera 180 degrees and you see everybody sweep up the hill, I just think this is a great TV moment in the F1 calendar.
I mean, it looks wild. It looks like Inception, or like
the world is bending.
Right? That looks like too much elevation change. You said 133 feet. That's 10 stories, man.
Yeah, so it's a huge
crazy
climb, very, very fast, and it's super cool. I love it.
Very cool.
Okay, number 9. The tunnel in Monaco. This is a favorite of mine. To be frank, this is far and away. This is not Monaco's most technical corner. There's tons of, honestly, probably there's tons of really famous parts of Monaco. Almost every single part of the Monaco track is iconic in its own way. Part of me thought about including Tabac. Part of me thought about including Poitiers. But in this instance, I just love it because, especially on like rainy Monaco weekends, like you have this last one, you sweep out of the rain into the tunnel. It's just like, it's just super cool. Them like racing through this tunnel alongside the sea. The sound, the sound of the tunnel is cool to me. The way the engine noise is like ricocheting off the walls. I love it. And also, I wanted to shout out Poitiers, which I just mentioned, which is turn 8. Immediately before this is turn 9, quote unquote turn 9, because it's borderline like a long, slightly curved straight, but is the one where we saw Sainz and Perez collide this year, turn 8, right before the tunnel, which itself is a very challenging corner and kind of begins this section. So I always love that part.
Oh, yeah. This, to me, seems like it's going to be too low on the list, to be quite honest. It looks so cool when they're zooming through, and like you're saying, with it being a covered tunnel, like if it's raining, there's such a difference in the track being dry to wet right there. Even if it's not raining and it's just sunny, there's such a different change in the darkness to the lightness. I think it's such a wild thing, and it looks the most like, of all of these various like city course things, it feels the most city to me to be driving through a tunnel.
It's true. It's a very like video game feel moment.
Exactly.
It's a very video game feel moment, which F1 doesn't have tons of. Of course, like actual F1 video games, but I'm talking about the California rushes of the world or something like that.
Good one.
Okay, number 8. Turn 8 in Baku, the castle section. This is actually technically turn 8 and 9. It is the narrowest point on the F1 calendar, a mere 24.9 feet wide. And subsequently, no one has ever gone through this section side by side. They have technically 2 cars could fit through it, but no one has ever been gutsy enough to try and overtake here, and for good reason. It is considered incredibly difficult to manage. It is really tough to thread the needle at the speeds they do it. It's just visually very, very cool. You're talking about this like centuries old castle that you're zooming past. And this is actually, interestingly enough, a kind of a fabricated part of it. This is actually cobblestone streets here that they've built tarmac up over for every race weekend. So it's not what the actual street level looks like here, but super cool moment. I always think this is like a great shot on TV where you see people kind of like zipping up through it, like a quick right then left, and kind of flying through. It's awesome.
This one to me, when you see cars just zooming through it, is when you're like, these guys are incredible to be going that fast, navigating something so back and forth and so narrow. There are a lot of just like taps of the wheels, I feel like, on that right barrier that ends up in a crash. And I think there's like a runoff just to the right of that I feel like is used all of the time when they're racing here.
It is. This, in general, I actually am a bit of a softy for the Baku track. I think it actually makes for fun races and like weird stuff. I think it's a little bit underrated actually as a course.
Okay, I do like that one, so maybe the Monaco Tunnel was in the right spot.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so number 7, turns 12 and 13 at the Canadian Grand Prix. Bienvenue au Quebec. Bienvenue to the Wall of Champions, the famously titled Wall of Champions here, famously called that because in 1999, F1 champions Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve, and Michael Schumacher all exited the race by hitting it.
Same
race. All former F1 champions who all ran into the same wall. Coming out of this chicane, towards the end of it, it's a great moment in F1. Great because it's taken a lot of great racers out of it, but also because it is actually the site of some awesome late braking and some awesome overtaking. We saw that in this year's Grand Prix, where you see people fly into the very end of that. The first chunk of the chicane and brake real late and try to make for a daring overpass and then come out, and there's a nice little sprint down into a DRS section. It's a great moment on the calendar, and I think always is like a, the end of the lap is coming. So for people who are fighting, especially if you're in a very tight fight towards the end of a race, it's a really decisive moment. And I love it.
What's so tricky about it that it would send so many people into the wall?
I think it's because the chicane, people are trying to cut the corner, and they're trying to come out of it with as much speed as possible. Like any corner, you're trying to exit the corner with as much speed as possible. So I think what they're doing is they're finding themselves like kind of whipping around as they come to the left and the car's sliding. If you lose the back end even the teensiest bit, you're going to hit the wall. You're done. It's definitely one of those where even when you nail it, you're basically kissing the wall. You're right up against the edge because you've used as much of the track to like slingshot yourself into the subsequent straightaway. So they're just taking always a lot of risk, and people get it wrong by an inch, and that was too much to have gotten it wrong by.
All right, nice one.
Okay, next up, 130R in Suzuka. We haven't been to Suzuka in a couple of years, so I feel like people have forgotten about what a great racetrack this is. It's one of my favorites, and certainly like Japan is like one of the great kind of racing nations out there. But this is the iconic corner of this track. They reprofiled it in 2003, so it's not quite as intense as it used to be, but it's still a super high-speed corner, which is just kind of one of the great parts about it. You kind of come out of a section, I believe it's called Spoon is the section you come out of, and then you head into 130R and you just gain tons of speed heading down towards the end of this, the end of the course. This is towards the back end of Suzuka, which is always a little confusing because you have it's the only figure 8 course. You see the course going under it here. It's the only figure 8 on the calendar where the cars go beneath other cars at a different point on the track. So I think this is just one of those ones that makes the cut because for the drivers, it's a favorite. It's a very technical, very high-speed corner where to really nail it, you carry tons of speed into the subsequent corners. Into the subsequent straightaway. And for that reason alone, like the drivers love it. They all speak really highly of it. It's kind of famous among the drivers themselves, even if maybe it doesn't have the majesty or the allure of some of these other shots that you see where they just look so cool. It's kind of a true driver's corner.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Good one.
Okay. Number 5, this is a true fan favorite here. Turn 11 at Monza, better known as Parabolica. This is a super high-speed corner, of course, one of the fastest on the calendar and one of the fastest courses on the calendar, known as the Temple of Speed. It's the last year. You can see it's a long right-hander. They come down the straight here and they head out towards the final towards the line there. They race towards a quick line on the backside over there. You've seen a lot of people put it into the wall on the far side. This used to be a truly wild corner because back in the day it was an oval and it had a gradient to it. There's the historical track is actually on the outside of it. It's like a banked track. Sorry, it's still an oval, but what I meant is there's banking along it, like an American style oval.
Okay.
There was, and so people used to kind of get up on the oval and take it at these incredibly intense speeds. They still do, but just one of the great moments on the calendar, and certainly like the iconic shot of what is one of the iconic courses.
And it makes you feel good about taking math in high school, too, because you're like,
you get it.
Finally, a reason to learn what a parabola is, because they named a turn after it, and guess what? It looks like a parabola.
It looks like
great stuff.
Okay, next up here, number 4, the swimming pool complex. This is really turns 13, 14, 15, and 16, so I'm including a couple in here. Sure. The one that, but this is a great shot. It used to be a long straightaway run down to Rascasse, which is at the end of this. But when they added in the actual pool here, they had to make it into a little double chicane, the first part of which is known as the Louis Chiron chicane. And that's what we're looking at here. But on the back end of it is also that famous part where during qualifying, you're always seeing guys cutting it super close. And you're seeing the tires like kiss the edge of like of the barrier. That's in this moment here. So certainly always features very heavily in the most important qualifying of the year. Just a part where, I like this one. Okay, amidst Monaco was tough because there's so many moments in Monaco that you could pull out as saying this is an incredible turn. I like this one the most. The reason I like the swimming pool complex is because it is actually one of the few moments where you see the truly daring, truly nutso actually go for a pass in today's racing, which is very hard to pull off, and infrequently do they actually make it work. But you do see that sometimes here, but also in qualifying and even in the race itself. This is a moment where time is really won and lost. This is a section here that can make or break your quali lap, because there's so many ways to approach it, and like this can be the difference maker in terms of a whole, fractions of a second. So I just think it's great. I think it's a really important part of the lap, a really challenging part to take at a very high level, and very beautiful being with the pool and the boats.
It looks cool, and it's actually crucial to the race.
It looks cool, and it's crucial. A nice combination.
Yeah, no wonder it ranked so high. Does anybody ever get in the pool? I don't think that's the pool that Ricardo jumped.
No. That's not the pool.
That's a separate pool.
That's a separate pool. I think that's more of like a party pool.
Party pool.
I think that the pool is the. I guess it's the. I mean, I want to say Rainier, but that sounds like Mount Rainier I guess Rainier or something, like the third nautical stadium. I think it's like their Olympic training center style thing, but it's outdoors. So is that? I don't know. But
they've got looks like a 5 and 10 meter board, like a diving.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think you're right.
But I think it's meant to be like a performance center, not like a party pool. Which there are plenty of the latter in Monaco.
Nice. Yeah. I think I saw Skeets at some of the party pools in Monaco recently.
Yeah,
actually.
He knows how it is. Yeah, I should. We should see if I should get him to take a little drive. See how fast he could take that section.
Do a C-ball off that platform.
Okay. Number 3. Now we're getting to the good stuff here. The Senna S's in Interlagos. This is such an awesome moment on the F1 calendar. It's just after the main straight, where there's that they come dipping down into this section and, zipping through here. There's a big elevation change downward off of the main straight here into these Senna S's. You oftentimes see people running very closely here. You see some very people come to contact here. Very famously, Alex Albon and Lewis Hamilton came to contact through this section. A lot of other people here. This is also a cool one because it's the pit lane exit is over to the left and kind of mimics it. You can kind of see people walking on the pit lane exit in this shot, and they end up kind of coming past this entire section and re-entering on the Retta Apposta, which is the straightaway just beyond this, where there's a DRS section. The DRS detection zone is actually in the Senna S's right here. So it's this cool moment. It's a great moment on TV where oftentimes you see the cars in the pit lane. They're both snaking through, oftentimes racing to try to get to that pit lane exit point and hopefully, stay ahead of someone who's snaking through the S's themselves. But a really technical moment, a moment that for a driver in the lead is really critical to nail, because you are coming up on a detection zone ahead of you, and if you can get a great exit out of these corners, it makes it much more defensible there. It's not where you see all the overtaking happen, although you have, but it is oftentimes the moment that sets up the great overtakes. And just in general, I think, again, this is one where for the drivers, they enjoy what a technical section it is. And, kind of just a start to what is one of my favorite laps in the F1 calendar.
Were they calling this the Senna S's while he was racing, or is this after he passed?
That's a great question, actually. I do not know. I feel like it's more recent than that, but I would have to double up. It's not the only place where they call it the Senna S.
Okay.
But I believe it's the most famous one because he is Brazilian and whatever. So, so I believe it's the most famous instance of referring to the Senna S's.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2, Maggots and Becketts in Silverstone. This is, you're coming into Maggots and Becketts. You've just come out of Copse Corner, which is one of the most famous and fastest corners on the F1 calendar, famously where Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen came together last year, sending Max into the wall. And then you come into what is an incredibly technical section here, again, as you snake through this little S section, carrying a lot of speed. These got their names because of nearby Maggots Moor, and then the medieval chapel of St. Thomas a Becket kind of stood at this place before it was driven. They enter the corner at about 186 miles per hour, but then they're coming out at around 112 miles per hour, so they lose a lot of speed into it, but that's kind of entirely the point. It's like, can you, how little speed can you lose?
Right.
How much, can you manage this? It's also just right up there at the very top of the calendar for like weird, great names.
Oh, yeah.
If you're talking about names, it's got a good name, and I'm giving it bonus points for a good name. Maggots and Becketts gets bonus points for its good name.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because I was looking up the picture beforehand, and I think I typed it in Maggates, because I was like, there's no way it's spelled like maggots.
But it's just.
But guess what? It's spelled like maggots.
Yeah. And then this is where you exit also famous. You oftentimes hear it as referred to Maggots, Becketts, and Chapel, because you head right into Chapel right after this. Silverstone was hard because there are like every corner has a good name. Every corner is iconic in its own right. It's a bit like Monaco, where I could have easily done a list editing of top 10 corners in F1, and it had 3 or 4 Silverstone corners on. I mean, Copse almost made it as well. Stowe is an incredibly famous corner, so multiple on there that I seriously considered including. But I decided to mix it up a little bit.
Only one of them named after maggots, though. So.
Only one named after old.
That was
Maggots
number 2.
And his more. That was number 2, leaving us with number 1, unsurprisingly, Eau Rouge and Raidillon. My favorite moment of the F1 calendar, my favorite kind of TV shot on the F1 calendar, is you see people come out of La Source, hit that hard right, and then just roar up the hill. There's a quick down and then an up again as they gain, over 100 feet in elevation as they head up towards the Kemmel Strait, named after the red clay that colors the iron in the earth that colors the creek that runs right beneath this section. You noted that one time earlier. I didn't know that off the top of my head, but Trey did. But there was just one of the great moments on the F1 calendar, like you've seen, I don't know, this one almost kind of speaks for itself. It's they talk about it. It's got that granddaddy of them all kind of way where people just kind of love the Rose Bowl. Yeah. People love Eau Rouge. They love all the people who've raced here. They love what it symbolizes about the sport, and it's like glory days. So yeah, just a great moment. Not probably your greatest overtaking moment on the track, although it oftentimes sets up a great overtaking moment on the Kemmel Strait just behind it. So a favorite of mine for sure.
People are saying can't be mad at that number 1 pick. What a great list.
I will admit this is a bit like somebody being like, let's talk about the best basketball players of all time, and that's why my number 1 is Michael Jordan or something. It's like if you go online and you type in best F1 corners, like Eau Rouge is going to be at the top of a lot of lists. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Those people aren't wrong. It's awesome. It's one of my favorites.
It ain't broke, so they're not trying to fix it, which is why we'll be back at Spa again next year to see that incredible corner. I think like the pictures of that one, and I think it was Circuit of the Americas, which had the huge
climb,
the huge elevation as well. Sometimes the broadcast camera doesn't necessarily give you the full picture of things just because of where the cameras are situated, but like seeing the elevation changes to that kind of gives you a little bit more perspective as well, that like they're not just going side to side very fast, they're going up and down as well.
Yeah, and so the one thing I'll say, okay, so I mix it up a bit. Some of them were like, this is just iconic and cool. Some of them, these are very technically challenging. Some of them, they're just very beautiful, whatever. But for me, I actually do think that latter category, even though Maggots and Becketts is not all that like handsome of a corner, that's more about how technically challenging it is and how much drivers love it. For me, it's like Eau Rouge is just my favorite moment of the year on television. And that's what I love about Spa. Like, my buddy Ryan texted me on Saturday morning, I think when they did a big pan out and they showed like an overhead shot of the whole Ardennes area. And it's so beautiful. It's like, it's cool when they race in cool places.
Totally.
Because it's a spectacle and it's kind of a TV product, and it makes it great in a certain way. So.
Yeah, and it's kind of strange to me to hear that some of the problems that F1 has with the track is that there aren't like more grandstands and more spectator places, because once you have that stuff in, you're losing the beautiful and the natural beauty of the track.
Totally. That is their problem with it, right? Is that there's actually not that many places to go comparatively.
Got all these beautiful trees.
Yeah, totally, right? Which is like, but that's what makes it so special. It's what makes it so cool for TV, and it's what makes it. My understanding is, I've never been. I would love to go, but cool to attend is like it's a wild place to go and watch a race.
Well, it's only on the calendar for one more year as of now, so I guess we got to go next year.
We got to go.
Yeah,
that means we're going, my friends.
Those are Graydon's top 10 corners in Formula One. Let us know if you agree, disagree, what you'd add, what you'd take off. Leave it down in the comments, tweet at us, whatever.